Today we're going to get into drop-2 voicings. A drop voicing is an open position chord created when you move one or more of the four voices of a closed position chord down an octave. Thinking of the standard SATB configuration, moving the second voice from the top, the alto, down an octave creates a drop-2 voicing. So let's go to the keyboard. To get started, practice little chords as described in Chapter 3C, namely major 6, minor 6, and diminished 7th, in drop-2 position like this. So we're going to take a C6, that's in second inversion, C6, and I'm going to drop that second voice from the top down an octave. And then I'm going to play all four inversions of C6 in drop-2. And then C minor 6, all four inversions, and then C diminished 7th, and then that takes me to the key of D flat major, so then I go to D flat 6, and I do that, D flat 6, then D flat minor 6, D flat diminished 7th, and continue. The next key is going to be D major, and so on. Keep on going through all 12 keys. It's really an ear training exercise because instead of memorizing the notes, I'm really memorizing the sound. So it takes some time, but it's a good idea to at least master that in a few keys before going on. Also try the following 2-5-1 progression in drop-2 in all inversions: 4-6, 7 diminished 7th, 5-6, 1. Okay, so 4-6 in the key of C, that would be F6. Okay, then the next one would be B diminished 7th, that's the 7 diminished 7th. And then 5-6 would be G6, resolving to C6. Okay, now if I do that, let me do it in this. Start with root position F6, and then B diminished 7th, closest one, which actually is an F diminished 7, right? And then the closest G6 is right here. And then what I'm going to do is convert this to drop-2. And I get the 2-5-1. The bass player is playing the bass notes. I don't have to worry about this. So basically the F6, B diminished 7th, G6, C6 implies D minor 7, G7 flat 9, C major 9 to C major 6. And the good thing about this is we can do this 2-5-1 progression in all four inversions. So we're no longer limited to just A and B voicings. Now we have four different ways of playing this. And finally, okay, a couple things to take a look at. Notice how when I do this, only 2 out of the 4 notes move. Okay, if I'm thinking about soprano, alto, tenor, bass, here, just the alto and the bass move, and then the outer 2, the soprano and the bass move. Soprano and bass, then soprano and tenor, soprano and tenor, alto and tenor, alto and tenor, and finally alto and bass. So that's something I would consider doing in all 12 keys. Something to take a look at here. This B diminished 7th is actually the same as A flat diminished 7th, same as F diminished 7th, D diminished 7th, the same notes. So that means it's a little passageway or portal to another key, a related key, a key that shares the same passing diminished or diminished 7th. So that B diminished 7th is also the passing diminished not only in the key of C, but also in the key of E flat major, G flat major, and A major. So when I get to that B diminished seventh, I can simply change keys. Once I get comfortable with this, and I can maybe go to A major all of a sudden and continue the progression in A major. And when I get to another diminished chord, I'm going to maybe all of a sudden move to E flat major. And then maybe G flat major. Smooth. Maybe back to C major. Ah. So every time I move, I only move 2 out of the 4 notes. So it's a really nice voice leading exercise. It's important to notice that the entire progression utilizes notes from the C6 diminished scale. That's a term we talked about in chapter 3D. Hopefully I'll do a video on that in the future. But simply stated, C6 diminished refers to a scale of chords which alternates between C6 and B diminished, or the diminished seventh a half step below the target. In this case, the target is C6. So it alternates 6 diminished, 6 diminished, 6 diminished. Every chord in my 2-5-1 progression contains notes from either C6, B diminished seventh, or a combination. So that first chord, F6, it's true, it is F6, but another way of looking at it is it's actually C6, but with 2 notes that are borrowed from the passing diminished, B diminished seventh. So that's C6 with 2 borrowed notes, B diminished seventh, and then G6, yes, it's G6, but it's also C6 with 2 borrowed notes. The E and G belong to the C6, the B and the D belong to the B diminished seventh, and then I can resolve to a complete C6. So in other words, everything here is actually either some sort of C6 or some kind of B diminished seventh, or a combination, a hybrid, if you will. I'm staying within this scale, right? That's the scale that's created when you alternate between C6 and B diminished. You're going to magically produce this scale on top, a C major scale with the addition of the flat 6. So this 2-5-1 progression actually stays within the C6 diminished scale. Right? So that's an important concept to be aware of. So let's now review how to convert common jazz chords to little chords. So if I'm trying to create a C major 9, all I have to do is play a C in the bass, and I can play any inversion of that G6 in Drop-2. And that instantly gives me a C major 9. So a quick way to remember that is play a major 6, a fifth above the root note. Right? Or you can think about it in the key of C. This would be Roman numeral 5-6, this Drop-2 shape. I can also just play a C6, a regular C6 in Drop-2. If I want to play a D minor 7, I play a major 6th, a minor 3rd above. So that's F6. Or I can think in the terms of the key. So in the key of C, that would be a 4-6. A G9 is D minor 6 over G. So that's a minor 6, a fifth above the root. so D minor 6. In the key of C, it's Roman numeral 2 minor 6, D minor 6. Okay, G7 flat 9 would simply be 7 diminished 7th, so that would be B diminished 7th, some inversion of B diminished 7th over G. If I want an altered G7 altered, I can play a minor 6 a half step above the root, so that's A flat minor 6 in drop 2. And in the key of C, that would be the flat 6 minor 6. Now in the book, there's a little typo here for 5-7 sus. It says flat 7-6. It should say 4-6, Roman numeral 4-6. Sorry about that typo. So that's a major 6, a minor 7th above the root. So that means F6 over G. And that gives me a nice G sus sound. For one minor, just one minor 6, just play the parallel minor 6, so C minor 6. For D minor 7 flat 5, play the minor 6 a minor third above, so that's F minor 6 over D. Again, that's 4 minor 6. Okay, so here's a little etude I just made up, and all I'm doing is I'm just playing all the inversions of the 4th column, the column on the right. So for C major 9, I'll do it in triplets. Play the root and I'll play. And then C6. And then D minor 7. All inversions. G9. G7 flat 9. G7 alt, G7 sus, C minor 6, and finally D minor 7 flat 5. Back to the top. Now convert the chords in the bridge of Polka Dots and Moonbeams to little chords in drop 2. Play through the example in figure 3 on page 122 while humming or singing the melody. What I'll do is I'm going to first pre-record myself playing the melody with the bass, and then I will accompany myself playing through the drop 2 voicings in figure 3 as written, and then I'll play it again, and I'll play it in some different inversions just to give you a little taste of what some of the possibilities are. Okay, I'm going to do it again, this time using some other inversions. Remember, by adding a diminished 7th chord a half step below any 6th chord, you can create a smooth scale of chords alternating between 6th and diminished. Try these 2-5-1 progressions utilizing multiple 6th diminished scales. Now, For the D minor 7, we're at 2-5 and 2-5-1 in C major. For the D minor 7, we said we could use F6 in any inversion. Right now, we're going to connect the inversions by playing the E diminished 7th as a passing diminished. So that means we're essentially playing the F6 diminished scale for D minor 7. And when we get to G7, we can think of it as a G7 sus and continue that F6 diminished scale. That works fine. The only thing here is if I want to resolve to C major, the B flat in the melody moving to the C is not that melodic. A better choice would be, right? So I want to harmonize that melody by using B diminished 7, F6, B diminished 7, C6. So going back to the original 2-5-1 we studied using notes of the C6 diminished, when I get to that B diminished 7 in measure 2, I'm already back to C6 diminished. So yeah, I play an F6 here, but this F6 really is C6 with 2 borrowed notes, B diminished 7th, C. So you see how much smoother that sounds? The first way would be staying within the F6 diminished scale. My comping melody is, that's a little bit awkward. Much better. Just notes of the C major scale, that's what I want to use. So I have to harmonize that note with a B diminished. That takes me back to C6 diminished. So what I like to do here is just experiment going up and down the scale using either the 4-6 diminished or 1-6 diminished for the 2-5 and the 1-6 diminished for the 1. So in the key of C, you can use the F6 diminished or the C6 diminished. To harmonize the 2-5 part, and then when you get back to 1, you're back to C6 diminished. So it's okay to have some chromatic notes. The trick is you want to resolve that chromatic note by half step. So if I'm going down the scale, the B flat is okay because it's resolving to A, so I don't mind it. But if I'm going up the scale, I prefer to have a B diminished there, so that my comping melody resolves by half step. And then I can play a C sharp diminished to get me back to F6. Remember, C sharp diminished is the same as E diminished. So it creates a circle. 2, 5, 1. Six, 2, 5, 1. And if you notice, for some of these chords, I'm borrowing notes from the passing diminished. So sometimes for a D minor 7, instead of just strictly staying with notes of the F6, I could borrow that E from the passing diminished and create a D minor 9 sound. And same thing with the C major. I could borrow that, I could be borrowing that B from the passing B diminished to create C major 7. Here I'm borrowing that E, right, from the C6 to make the B diminished a little more fancy. That gives me a 13 flat 9 sound. And resolve that to C6-9 because I'm borrowing that D from the B diminished seventh. Revisit chapter 3B, 3C, and 3D and move the second voice from the top in all the little chords and A and B position voicings down an octave, thus creating drop-2 voicings. When A and B closed position voicings are converted to drop-2, A position switches to B position and vice versa. Here I have a B position C13 chord. If I drop the alto voice down an octave, now the third is on the bottom, so I'm going to label that drop-2 voicing A position. Same thing here for A position C13 chord in closed position. If I drop the alto down an octave, now the flat 7 is in the lowest position, so I get a B position C13 chord in drop-2 position. Let's take a look at the accompaniment to Frank Sinatra's These Foolish Things from chapter 3D. Here it's shown using drop-2 voicings. For much of it, the original closed position chord is transposed up an octave so that the resulting drop-2 will be in a good range and not too muddy. In this video, I continue the accompaniment through the whole song. I'll accompany myself playing the melody and bass with drop-2 voicings. To create the accompaniment, I'll use the guide under the treble staff indicating the closed position chord that has been converted to drop-2. For the bridge and the last A, I'll improvise the inversion and rhythm for the drop-2 voicing indicated. So let's quickly take a look at figure 5. In measure 1, B flat 6-9 has been converted to drop-2 in A position, meaning the third is in the lowest position. In measure 2, I'm simply playing E flat 6 to D diminished 7. That implies the E flat 6 diminished scale, so that I have a whole scale of chords that I can play for C minor 7. At the end of the bar, I play 2 inversions of F sharp minor 6 to imply F7 alt. Bar 3, I have B flat major 9, so I can just play F6. To play G minor 7, I alternate between B flat 6 and A diminished 7. Then C13 is played in B position followed by A position, and then moving down in parallel motion to B13 in A position. Now measure 5, I play within the A flat 6 diminished scale to create this movement. And then A position for B flat 13 flat 9, resolving to B position E flat major 9, followed by D7 sharp 5 in drop-2, and A flat minor 6 in drop-2. This implies G7 alt. Then in measure 7, I have a whole measure of C9, so that I can use the G minor 6 diminished scale to create a whole scale of chords, and then I just have a C minor 7, so I can play E flat 6 followed by D diminished 7, and then finally F7 sharp 5 is played on beat 4 of measure 8. Okay, and then the A section is then repeated. I get to the bridge and you notice that it's in slash notation. I can use the little chords and A and B position labels underneath the treble staff that can help me navigate through the changes. I just select what inversion, right? And then A position, that's sort of specific right here before measure 15, B position. So that kind of tells me where to, play the voicing, the drop-2 voicing. And then D minor 7, here I have F6 hyphen E diminished 7. That indicates that it's an F6 diminished scale of chords. And then B flat 6, A diminished 7 for G minor 7. Right? And then I can resolve that to C7, G minor 6 if I want, and then C minor 6 for F7. E flat 6, and E flat 6 and D diminished 7 for C minor 7. And once again, F sharp minor 6 is used to get back to the last A. Okay, at this time let's comp through These Foolish Things using Drop-2 voicings. Here we go, let's try this. Okay, here's the part where we play along with the band. Workout 41 is to use Drop-2 voicings on the changes to Polka Dots and Moonbeams and play along with Chet Baker. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to play along with the track that comes with the book. And the first 8 bars are shown here illustrated using USTs and Drop-2s. The melody is referenced from time to time. In the second half of measure 1, the melody appears as the top voice of the Drop-2 voicings. In measure 4, the melody is placed on top of the UST voicings on beats 1, 3, and 4. And so the game plan will be, for the first A, I'm going to play Drop-2s of closed position without sixth-diminished scales, so just the Drop-2s. Second A, I'll play figure 6 as written, and that includes some sixth-diminished scales as well as some USTs. Then I'll improvise for the bridge in the last A. Again, the Drop-2 shape is indicated below the treble staff. So here we go. Okay, stay tuned for other YouTube videos highlighting other parts of Introduction to Jazz Piano Deep Dive. Feel free to subscribe below. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.